Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 13. As expected, his cousin remained invisible, but they both did better when Ferdinan wasn't around. However, soon that wouldn't be an option. Before then, I need to know. For all of Ferdinand's faults, his cousin didn't lie. Neglect details, yes, but never actually lied. After the welcome back party his year-mates threw him, Zephyr returned to an empty suite. His cousin was still gone come morning. This left him with little choice. Luckily, the trip to Ferdinand's lab was nice, whether by boat or foot. The beauty of the Sciences Island was wasted on those who spent most of their time indoors, staring at screens. But maybe an island filled with perfect climbing trees, flower-speckled metals, and a panoramic view worth dying for gave the scientists an incentive to step outside for fresh air occasionally. Taking the bridge, Zephyr headed toward the far side of the island. Most of the labs were fairly evenly spaced, but Ferdinan picked a hidden one furthest from the rest. Relief filled Zephyr when he passed his ally's empty lab. Why would John pick this building? Did his family pressure him? Thankfully, the dentist should be in class, giving them privacy. Metal pounding metal danced down the hall. I don't want to deal with him. Activating the chimes, Zephyr waited. It took 2 more times before his cousin's ears perked. How does he get so lost in things? Always be aware of your surroundings. Pale blue crystals turned, even across the room and through the window. Why won't he stop? Anger boiled up, but he pushed it down until he felt empty, exhausted. Why are you so selfish? That's all I see when I look at you. The skeleton froze, face warped in pain. He hasn't changed. Those eyes were still the same, if not more selfish. Why? Zephyr studied his cousin. Ferdinan shook and was horribly pale, and thin, much more than he remembered. The image of the little boy from his memories filled his mind. Why do I hate him? Ferdinan opened the door, but was bowed on one knee before the prince made it inside, just as propriety calls for. How may I serve you, my prince? Zephyr studied his cousin closer, but Ferdinan looked the same as always. Take off your shirts. Ferdinan swallowed hard. That's a command, not a request. 2 fingers came together before throwing them forward. Yes, my prince. I apologize. Bony fingers fumbled with the buttons of all 4 shirts he wore until the skeleton was shivering in the cool air. Zephyr's stomach lurched. Disgusting. Scars ran over the right side of Ferdinand's back and shoulders, as if he'd been whipped repeatedly throughout his life. The rest was marred with a sheet of scar tissue wrapping around his left side. Stand. Yes, my prince. The scar-wrapped skeleton rose, and it seemed he wasn't going to stop. Though Ferdinan kept his head down, he stood over a foot taller. When did he grow that much? Shaking his head, Zephyr circled, studying the frail body. Those scars. How many were erased by the fire? Melted skin covered the majority of Ferdinand's back and wrapped around his left arm, stopping with claw marks across his abdomen. One more go-around, and he noticed an indentation with a slightly different hue along the top back of Ferdinand's shoulder, as if something gouged out what little meat was there. Why? I'm sorry, my prince. I don't know what you mean. Golden fingers danced. Why? You've been a self-absorbed, uncaring, pathetic excuse for a human this entire time. So why? What did you gain? Ferdinan stood, confused and trembling, every muscle tense, ready to move at a moment's notice. The fire. What did you gain by jumping into a burning building? Obviously it's not recognition. So why? I just followed my... The skeleton froze, guilt marred his face, and that selfishness intensified. Unbearable heat flooded Zephyr's chest. What did you do? Ferdinand shook, searching for words. I just did. Pain numbed the back of Zephyr's hand as Ferdinand's head flew to the side. Don't lie to me. A bony hand covered that sunken cheek. His cousin didn't say anything, but the selfishness in those eyes grew exponentially. That heat intensified. Then Zephyr was running, burning off the fury. Zephyr left as quickly as he came. Shivering, Ferdinan collected his shirts from the ground. Weak, defenseless, naked. He felt less than human, but he deserved worse. I felt again. Worse, he didn't understand how. Why am I so stupid? I can't even see. I'm so blind, so useless. His heart raced erratically. I have to figure it out. I have to fix this. I can't fail the Duchess, our country. I can't fail again. I've killed so many. You're a murderer at heart. After redressing, Ferdinan double-checked the device was properly linked before closing the case. They're so tiny. How could someone do that to a child? And how could he use another's suffering to forget his cousin's words? One swing of the hammer after another did nothing but bend nails and hit the table. The weight of the tool, the uncooperative angle the nail shifted at, it was too much. What did I do wrong? How do I fix it? A fiery serpent coiled around inside him. Why am I here? Why am I so useless? That scream left his throat and the hammer flew from his hand, embedding itself impressively deep, high up in the cinder block wall. What problems will your device cause that child when it proves to be as defective as you? Ferdinan stood, too exhausted to think. Determination drove him to the medicine hidden in the back of his closet. There wasn't much in the jar. 2 swallows. Hard to believe it was over a month's worth. Ferdinan raised the contents to his mouth. The powder caressed his thin lips. John will be the one to find me. Or Oya. Oya could handle it. But John? As annoying as the boy was, he couldn't do that to an ally. It'd be better to row out past my island and swim till I failed. Yeah, a failure to the end. His arm dropped. A shaky breath escaped. That cackling voice escorted him to his lab. Measuring out a small portion, he mixed in a little water. It was so insubstantial, it didn't seem enough to do anything. So, he doubled the dose again. Think anything you make will work? Someone as worthless and incompetent as you? I have to try. Ferdinan curled up on his sack, staring at his supply of nutrition bars. He should grab one, but the very idea disgusted him. Please start working. I can't do this anymore. Yuyu's alive, but it had nothing to do with him. The transport slowed as they neared the pier. Angry fire surrounded him, burning rubble, fingernails torn from seared hands, but he couldn't reach her. He was too weak. We're going to die. We're here, son. A gentle voice ripped Elby out of that unstoppable moment. It took biting his lip to keep from panting. No, Healer Herard fixed them. My nails were back within days, not even a scar. Thank you, Master Ludwig. How long will you be? An hour, maybe? Relief sighed out of him when he looked at his hands. My nails were back within days. No scars. I don't know how long she'll be up for visiting. I understand. Tell Yuyu and Oa we're happy she's awake. Master Ludwig nodded and gestured to the gangplank. I've got business on the next island over. I'll return here in an hour. Yes, sir. Thank you. Elby waved off the transport. As soon as he was old enough, he'd get certified so he didn't have to keep depending on staff and older students for travel. Inside isolation, he asked for Yuyu's room and made his way there, but as he stood facing her door, he realized he didn't know what to do. I couldn't save her. I couldn't help her. I couldn't do anything. I took them there, if I'd waited, or anything. Ringing filled his ears. Ah, how he hated that sound. There was no reason for it. His ears were fine. He was fine. Elby hugged himself, fighting back the memories. Did he deserve to see someone who would have died because he wasn't good enough? Finally get to see her. How long has she been alone? Which was worse, seeing her or not? Dozens of students were begging to visit, but he was the first one chosen. It's only because Master Ferdinan can't come. But did that matter? She was his island sister. Even if he'd caused the explosion, how could he let her be trapped here alone? A shaky breath left him, then another, and another. Finally, he signaled the chime, announcing himself. Reaching for the handle, Elby painted on a smile as he opened the door. She sat at a little table near the window, reading something and massaging gloved hands, the same gloves they had him wear for a while. But, save a missing strip of hair, everything else about her was the same. Her bright pink eyes, her beautiful smile. Elby, I'm glad! There was an unusual pause before she added, You came! Hi! Making his way over, he sat across from her and offered his hand. How are you feeling? Much better now you're here. A gloved hand hovered over his. The look on her face said she was as hesitant as he, and as curious. Slowly it lowered until his hand caressed hers. Burning cold wrapped around his fingers and palm, working its way to his shoulder. Of everyone, Yuyu's touch was the most intense. But he'd become skilled at keeping his face steady, though he'd yet to learn how to stop himself from flinching. Yuyu's smile twitched and discomfort danced in her eyes, but she didn't pull away. I was worried. Elby nodded. There was no reason to finish that sentence. Considering all the damage done to her body, it wasn't beyond reason to believe she'd feel different, or that everyone would feel different to her. You're the same Yuyu to me, too. They both sat there grinning despite the pain. If this was the same, then maybe everything else would go back the way it was, too. Eventually, Elby took his hand back and pointed at the screen on the table. You're not doing schoolwork already. Light giggles left her. No, I've been... A strange look lined Yuyu's face. It took Elby's prompting for her to try again. Grabbing the screen, she focused on it. I talked to my family, and read some messages. I bet they're excited to hear from you. Melancholy hit him, but he didn't know how he could miss what he never had. Lots of tears. Yuyu burst out laughing and Elby joined. How are you? You can't tell anything happened. Lifting both hands, he showed them to her, but fire filled his mind. All restrictions have been lifted, too. Pink eyes stared at his hands. I'm sorry you were hurt. It wasn't your fault, and it wasn't anything like you. Clearing his throat, Elby hid his hands under the table so he didn't have to look at them. How about the messages? Mostly they're... Again her words stopped. It took focusing on the screen for her to continue. They're from instructors. Master Ferdinan offered to help with work I can't do. That's just like him, but he is the best. Yeah. Yu looked to the window and the ocean beyond. Yu? She didn't respond, so Elby called her name again. Yu, are you okay? She turned to look at him, but her mouth didn't move. Not until she focused on the screen again. How is Master Ferdinan? I heard he was hurt too. I'm not sure. What's going on? This grabbed her full attention. What do you mean? It wasn't fun, but he told her how tired their mentor was, even dozing off. Strange tension between Master Ferdinan and John Dinta, all of what little he knew. She didn't speak much, which was unusual for her, and when she did, Yu continued losing what she was saying until finding a focus. Are you sure you're okay? Her gaze turned razor sharp, burrowing into him. It's all there, but when I speak, it's gone. Elby wasn't sure what stabbed through his heart, but it was a pain he couldn't describe. I'll send for Healer Bear. A gloved hand reached out for him but stopped, returning to rest on the table. Thank you. Ferdinan wouldn't stir. Frowning, Oya laid down facing him, the top of her head inches from his shoulder. Red marred his face. Clothing covered the rest of the damage. Delicate fingers ran through his hair, but that diamond shell was still there. Do I have to amuse Emil to get back in? Good evening. A light twitch and Ferdinan rolled to his side. Sitting up, she shook him again. John'll turn into a mother hen if he catches you sleeping. A muffled groan answered, Why are you nice to me? Bare toes wiggled on the hard floor, and her entourage of glowing orbs danced around them. Why wouldn't I be nice to a nice person? I'm not nice. Ferdinand's skeletal body relaxed. When Oya couldn't wake him a second time, she stood and made her way to the one who hurt her friend. The golden boy slid down the cliff face. A smooth cliff face. No amount of desperation would manifest a handhold or a perch. She made sure of it. The elf sat above him, a cruel, unforgiving smile on her lips, descending only to make her rage known. The earth he clung to thrashed in agony, and when she backhanded him, unseen rings tore open his cheek. I thought there was good in you. Words flooded the sky, falling heavy and painful, crushing his spirit. Words he feared. Words his soul writhed under. Words he hid from. She wouldn't let him store them in darkness any more. She'd take away his escapes this night. The sky shattered, falling as glass, reflecting those dark hidden things, and every time the prince caught a glimpse it terrified him. And when terror rose, she magnified it, and he slid further, inch by inch, lower and lower. Once his feet ran out of solid rock, he'd die. His very being screamed it. The elf sneered and watched him struggle. When his script failed, she looked on as he plunged into eternal nothingness. You will learn. I don't care how. A snap of her fingers ended his falling and screaming with a wet thud. A bed of 10,000 needles caught him, piercing through. Blood trickled out with his agony. Another snap, and Zephyr was stripped and bound to a table. Craze sparkled in sapphire eyes, and pleasure laced her grin. Closing her fist brought a nasty-looking knife into existence. It was serrated on one side, barbed, and a good foot long. Starting at the fingers on his left hand, she cut, stabbed, tore, all the way to his heart. Then she moved to the right, and then his toes, left, right. All four were cut and sliced and carved. Blood coated her almost as much as it did him. Incessant screams filled the air, never ending, only fading when he struggled for breath. This wasn't enough. She wouldn't let him leave. The line she drew across his forehead bled profusely, trickling down to fill one eye. Maybe you didn't believe I'd kill you. Do you still think otherwise? This beast attacked her friend again, after she showed mercy to it, after she started helping it. You hurt my friend and you betrayed my trust. One warning, one lesson. You'll die the next time you hurt him. The vile blade sung, stopping just before it touched his eye. Do you understand me? All Zephyr could do was cry breathlessly, until she waved an arm and banished the pain. A full night of torture. If this didn't teach him, nothing would. My duty. Fear weakened his voice. I was just fulfilling my duty. The elf all but growled. Your duty? This? There is a responsibility you have, but you're failing it miserably. I don't understand. Snap. The restraints disappeared. Torn skin became whole and blood vanished. He stood in perfect health, looking up at her. You really will kill me. Sapphire eyes shimmered menacingly. Yes. Is he really so important? Zephyr clenched his fist below his nose and threw forward an open palm. Yes. Her face softened. Even if he wasn't, you need to find a better way. Regardless of what he thinks, it's better for your country to turn to chaos and upheaval than allow you to remain like this. Do you understand? Swallowing hard, Zephyr flinched. I'm obeying orders. Whose orders? The general you'll replace? No. The ruling monarchs, your parents. No. How can you be ordered by those lower than you? Zephyr looked down. Golden hands danced, but no words left his mouth. Why do you hate him? Silence stood between them for a moment. You'll never be an acceptable general as you are. His hands clenched into fists. Before... Yes? Before... You said you'd help me understand. Help me. This threw the elf off guard. He's asking for help? Because you don't want to die? Yes, I want to live. I want to be a strong general. I want to understand those things stopping me. And if understanding helps us both, isn't that for the best? You truly are selfish. The elf scowled before stepping forward, but it's a start. Bowing, Zephyr asked more formally, Please help me understand what you're teaching me. Starting tomorrow night. Tomorrow? You'll be exhausted when you wake up. The elf grinned unapologetically. Yes, ma'am. She didn't want to deal with him anymore, but he actually asked for help. Don't disappoint me again.